Good evening, everybody. My name is Scott Jacobs, and you're listening to Juiced Sports Radio, a major turn of events in the NFL Fuck for Luck Draft Sweepstakes. Joining me, as always, with this breaking news is Mike K. Mike, we just witnessed the Indianapolis Colts come out of nowhere to beat the Houston Texans, the reeling Houston Texans, I might add. First of all, are you surprised? Because the Texans, or a lot of people thought that the Colts had decided to tank games. Clearly that is not the case. So can we put away the notion that any team would ever try to tank games for the number one pick in the draft in the NFL?
Well, there's a difference between GMs wanting you to tank games and players giving up. I don't think players ever give up. That's their job. They want to win. Being on an 0-16 team kind of is a crappy thing to put on your resume. It doesn't really give you a shining endorsement. And I think, the Colts players were playing for their coach or they're playing for their jobs next year, one of the two, but they played inspired tonight. It took them 3 hours, as Mike Mayock said, to get into the end zone, and when they got into the end zone, they made it count. What a ball game. That was nuts. And, I don't know if I would call the Texans reeling, but, they did just get beat by the Colts. So, TJH showed a little bit of his inexperience, even though he had a pretty good game. He was extremely accurate. I think they were just hindered by the loss of Andre Johnson, and the defense didn't really help him out with a lot of BS penalties.
Let's just say the Colts do lose the number one pick, and it's based on strength of schedule. So the worst strength of schedule, the team that has that, if there is a tiebreaker, that would be the tiebreaker. And right now the Rams are right there, and the Vikings could sneak up too. Now both those teams still have 2 games left, so we'll see what happens, because as we've seen recently, the NFL is pretty crazy. But pretty improbable that the Colts have come back to win 2 in a row after having maybe arguably the worst 13-game stretch in NFL history. Do you care to disagree?
Oh, no, I don't disagree at all. I think they're significantly worse than the Lions, I believe, of 2008. But, yeah, I think that they have a worse team, and they've just managed to do it. I think Dan Orlovsky's been the answer. He's been a great leader. He looks like he did at UConn when he basically put that program on the map. His fellow UConn buddy, Donald Brown, had a pretty decent game, too. They just seem like they have rhythm. Orlovsky's a smart guy, and because UConn doesn't take any dummies. It just seems like he's been able to manage the offense and has better tools. His passes are so much more crisp than Curtis Painter. It's kind of sad.
We asked this earlier in the season after Carson Palmer was traded for 2 number ones in what seems like a pretty boneheaded trade right now. But now that Matt Barkley has pulled his name out of the 2012 NFL draft, and you've got Andrew Luck and everybody else. I know guys like Robert Griffin, Ryan Tannehill, some of these other guys could be really good players, but no one's considered as much of a sure thing as Luck. How much does this rise the price of how much the number one pick could be worth, especially if it's St. Louis or Minnesota, both teams who've recently invested number one picks in a quarterback?
Significantly, Scott. If you look at Barkley, some people thought was better. It was a better prospect than Luck. He was almost a lock to go top 5. He was likely going to be the Redskins' number one pick, and if not them, he would have gone to the Dolphins. Right now you're only looking at one other possibly cornerstone franchise quarterback in Robert Griffith, and outside of that, you're not. There's nobody that. Tannehill's good. Entry Jones was questioned, but no one on even close to the level of Luck. Barkley was the only almost sure bet near him. So, I think this brings up, if you're going to trade for him, if the price before was 2 first-round picks, a second and a third, now I think it's 2 thirds and 2 seconds. I think you're going to have to give up your entire draft for the next 2 drafts. Jerry Angelo, Chicago Bears style, if you want a guy like Luck.
Or Mike Ditka, New Orleans Saints style, when he gave a haul for Ricky Williams. Finally.
Right, wow, yeah.
Finally, Dan Orlovsky, what a redemption story he was tonight. He's not gonna be an elite NFL quarterback or even a starter most likely, but he's been part of some really, really bad NFL teams, including the 0-16 Lions. All of a sudden, he's taken over the Colts job. He's 2-2. What do you say for this guy?
I think it's pretty remarkable, and to add to the storyline, he was the Texans' backup the last 2 years. So, he came back and he beat, his old coach. You saw how much love he got after the game. I overheard him saying to TJ Yates, go win a Super Bowl. I mean, he's just a stand-up good guy. I mean, he's a guy you want to root for. Nobody deserves to go 0-16 twice. And you know what? He seems to have a lot of poise. Now, he's probably not a starter, but I guarantee you he's going to get some big backup money next year. People are going to want him. He's fiery. He's accurate. He's got a crisp spiral. I mean, you know what? I was listening to him make adjustments at the line, and I mean, he did it like it was any old starter in the league. I mean, if Peyton Manning, which they say could possibly never play again or be injured even going into the beginning of the season if they don't want to rush him, I mean, I think Orlovsky's a great get for the Colts.
Well, I was just going to ask you that as a final question. If the Colts do lose out on Andrew Luck, who everybody had him pegged for Indianapolis, if all of a sudden he's not there because they just fall to number 2 or the number 3 pick, where do the Colts go from here? Does this mean that they're probably going to be more patient with Peyton Manning, or does it mean they maybe reach on a guy like Robert Griffin or maybe trade down, accumulate some more draft picks? They have a lot of needs to fill, obviously.
I mean, I think there's a few routes they could go. I mean, Garcon has looked okay, in spots. He's pretty much been the only productive wide receiver outside Reggie Wayne, obviously with his touchdown tonight. But he's likely not to be re-signed. I could see him going to sign with a team like the Dolphins or get a boatload of money from, the Rams and catch passes from possibly Andrew Luck or Bradford next year. But with that said, I could see them either trading back to maybe 4, to overtake the Jaguars and draft Justin Blackmon to take his place, kind of help Peyton Manning out, because we've seen how insufficient the wide receivers have been without him. Or they could possibly go for a defensive player, because that's one of the worst defenses I've seen in a very long time. So, I mean, there's definitely a bunch of, avenues they could go. A large possibility, I know Pauline came out and said he wouldn't trade the first-round pick to get a bunch of second and thirds, but I could see them trading the number 2 pick to acquire a second and a third in the draft, because they need as much help as they can get. You don't go 2 and 14 if that's what they end up going, for no reason.
It was a crazy night in Indianapolis. The first time a 1-win team has ever beat a 10-plus win team. Who would have thought it? Indianapolis Colts fans have to be excited but completely pissed off right now. I'd really be curious to see what their emotions are. I'm sure they're all over the map. That's Mike K. I'm Scott Jacobs. Have a terrific holiday season, everybody. We'll catch up with you soon. You've been listening to Juiced Sports Radio.